this film, beautifully captures people with lived experience. So I'd rather sort of spend more time being available to answer questions than talk a lot, but just very briefly. I took an antidepressant for 22 years. I took it because I had a hard time enjoying life. I had stresses and and honestly, when I started taking it, I think it had some benefit. But I took it for way too long. I was the sort of the medical profession was exactly what you saw in the film. You go in for a 10-minute checkup every 6 months. How you doing? I'm doing okay. And they would just sort of keep you on the dose. Nobody ever suggested that taking a medication. I mean, I should have known better, but no psychiatrist ever suggested to me that taking a psychiatric medication for a long period of time could create a dependence, that there could be difficulties getting off, et cetera, et cetera. About 20 years in, I think in hindsight, a lot of what I think and understand is probably hindsight. I started waking up early with anxiety and eventually sort of concluded, well, maybe this drug isn't working. And my wife, who I'm very grateful is here today, said, well, I've always been a little nervous about you taking a medication for a long period of time, but if it's not working, why would you stay on it? And that made a lot of sense. And so I did go to my psychiatrist, or the psychiatrist at the time, and he said, oh yeah, if you want to get off, you could probably do it in 6 weeks. I was taking Effexor, which is probably the hardest antidepressant to get off. I think it was absolutely close to criminal to recommend that I try to do it in 6 weeks. I'll never know what would have happened if I'd taken 2 to 3 years, but that's what I think I should have done. And I crashed when I got off, and I basically spent 5 years in hell. And I eventually, it's very odd coincidence. I reached out to a friend, was talking to him about what I was going through. He said, you remember Lynn? And we were friends. We had been out of touch though. He said, Lynn is making a movie about what you're experiencing. And so Lynn and I reconnected, and I saw the movie 5 years ago when I was just in the beginning of this. And I eventually connected with some of the online forums, and we would talk. It's hard. I had everything, and I have everything. I have a loving family. I have a job that I liked. I don't have major financial concerns or things like that. And I woke up every morning pretty much wanting to die. I was in agony. I was in physical agony. I was in psychological agony. And unfortunately, a lot of what happened, and to the extent there are doctors and psychiatrists here, what compounded a lot of it was the lack of belief. Statements like, oh, well, you took an antidepressant because you were depressed, so that it's coming back. Well, I had never been suicidal when I was younger and when I started taking an antidepressant. I lost all motivation. Even when I wasn't terribly happy, I've always been a very driven person. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't care about anything. And they're like, well, sometimes when you're older, the depression's worse. And I kept thinking, this can't be true. I went to law school and did really well. And now I don't give a shit about anything, and I don't want to do anything. And I used to love riding my bike, and I made myself go out and ride my bike, but I didn't really want to do it. I just lost interest in life. I'd wake up, the mornings were hell. I was sleeping about 3.5 hours a night. As someone who, used to sleep, well, sometimes as much as 10 hours a night, but, and the lack of sleep was agonizing. I would wake up to a dark house, knowing that my family wouldn't be awake for 4 more hours, and I'd be in physical agony. I had burning nerve pain, the likes of which I'd never experienced burning nerve pain at all. I would take freezing cold showers at 2 a.m. to try to cool my body down because I was in such pain. So I don't want to do the whole litany, because people who go through this, they have different, I luckily never had tinnitus, but I connected with people who had tinnitus, which is just, drives them crazy. I didn't have that. I had the burning nerve pain. I had the insomnia. I had the profound depression and suicidality. And as I said, one of the hardest things, and we're at a medical school, but if I would say to doctors, is believe people when they tell you these stories. Believe that this is what they're experiencing. Don't tell them that it's just your old depression again. It wasn't my old depression. It was something completely unlike what I'd ever experienced And, but they also, if they heard evidence that didn't support their theory, they just ignore it. So I'd say, well, wait a minute. I know you say, well, this must be just your depression. And sometimes when you get older, the depression gets worse. How do you explain the fact that I feel like my skin has been cut open and people have put live wires under my skin and I am burning pain? And I put cold compresses on my chest at 2 a.m. And they would just kind of not respond to that. And I would think, this has no relationship to depression. This has no relationship to anything I experienced when I was younger before I got on psychiatric medications. So believe your patients. And I mean, my God, one other thing I'll say is when I did go back to the first psychiatrist before I realized this is a bad place to be, he was like, well, I've never heard anything like this before. And I actually believe that maybe in his subset of patients, he hadn't experienced that, but I just wanted to scream at him. But I'm talking to thousands of people on the internet who are going through this, and you don't know anything about this. Mm-hmm. How can you not? Even as David said, this doesn't happen to everyone. I also talked to people who got off, cold turkey off benzodiazepines without a problem. So I don't think we have any understanding of why some patients and some people go through these and things and others don't. But it's a loaded gun for some people. So you better be aware of these risks, and you better be aware and inform your people before they get on these drugs or these risks. And if they are telling you they want to get off, you really better be aware of it's an incredibly dangerous process to go through. I was a competitive athlete for many years. I don't think I would have survived if I hadn't experienced sort of grueling training for about 15 years. And I wouldn't have survived if I didn't have the support of my family. And a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have those things. It's that hard and it's that bad. So I'm really glad that Lynn's made this movie.
Thank you. Yeah.